Okay. We were talking about the historical evolution of the citizenship. So, in this lecture, we will conceptualize the historical evolution of citizenship. Okay. We were talking about the historical evolution of the citizenship. So, in this lecture, we will conceptualize the historical. Okay. Okay. So, the historical studies of citizenship reveal the key role of three historical elements of citizenship. The first element is rights, which establish how the individual is legally related to the polity. The second one is the access. This is important because it concerns the conditions for practicing the relationship between citizen and the community. This is best understood as access to political participation. Conditions of access are set by regulatory policies such as social policy and visa policy. They are crucial determinants of whether an individual has the citizenship right or not. The third historical element encompasses two modes of belonging to a community. First one is identity-based. This one evolves through social practices within a community. The other is based on the legal stipulation of nationality and hinges upon legal linkages to an entity. These are currently based either on the law of soil or law of blood. Or in the European Union, we can say that these are based on the nationality of one of the member states. Potentially, every person residing within a particular area has the opportunity to participate in the creation of collective identities. So here, residence is therefore a key requirement for participation. This importance of sociocultural practices is the legal status. We discussed this before. We talked about the nationality question. If there is a yes answer to this question or a no answer. If there is a yes answer, it means that regarding nationality, this individual is the part of that political community. So that individual is an in-group member. If there is no nationality in this context, then this person is not a member of that political community. Okay, so we have seen the key role of three important historical elements here. We talked about firstly about the rights, which establishes how the individual is legally related to the polity. The second element was the access. And by access, we refer to the conditions for practicing the relationship between the citizen and the community. And we talked about the third feature, which encompasses two modes of belonging to a political community. Here, one mode is about identity, and the other is based on legal stipulation of nationality. Okay, so we discussed these features, and now I will share my screen. Okay, the historical studies of citizenship reveal the key role of three historical elements of citizenship. The first element is rights, which establish how the individual is legally related to the polity. The second one is the access. This this is important because it concerns the conditions for practicing the relationship between citizen and the community. This is best understood as access to political participation. Conditions of access are set by regulatory policies such as social policy and visa policy. They are crucial determinants of whether an individual has the the citizenship right or not. The third historical element encompasses two modes of belongings to a community. First one is identity-based. This one evolves through social practices within a community. The other is based on the legal stipulation of nationality and hinges upon legal linkages to an entity. These are currently based either on the law of soil or law of blood. Or in the European Union, we can say that these are based on the nationality of one of the member states. Potentially, every person residing within a particular area has the opportunity to participate in the creation of collective identities. So here, residence is therefore a key requirement for participation. This importance of sociocultural practices is the legal status. We discussed this before. We talked about the nationality question. If there is a yes answer to this question or a no answer. If there is a yes answer, it means that regarding nationality, this individual is the part of that political community. So that individual is an okay. Now, so far we talked about the concept of citizenship, and we also talked about the definition of citizenship, historical evolution of the concept, and also the elements of citizenship. How can we define this concept? How can we understand this concept, etc. Okay, now we will talk about the concept of European citizenship. Okay, so as you can see, the literature on citizenship tells us two stories about the emergence of European citizenship. Each of these stories follow a distinctive trajectory. Okay, so let's look at the first story. The first story takes a legal perspective. It focuses on the expansion of rights, and this is based on the freedom of movement. So, this description is pushed by the case law of the European Court of Justice. So there is the second story as well, and the second story is based on a series of discussions and deliberations among policymakers and politicians about the European Union as a political entity. Okay, now so far we talked about the concept of citizenship, and we also talked about the definition of citizenship, historical evolution of the concept, and also the elements of citizenship. How can we define this concept? How can we understand this concept, etc. Okay, now we will talk about the concept of European citizenship. Okay, so as you can see, the literature on citizenship tells us two stories about the emergence of European citizenship. Each of these stories follow a distinctive trajectory. Okay, so let's look at the first story. The first story takes a legal perspective. It focuses on the expansion of rights, and this is based on the freedom of movement. So, this description is pushed by the case law of the European Court of Justice. So there is the second story as well, and the second story is based on a series of discussions and deliberations among policymakers and politicians about the European Union as a political entity. So here, a distinction is made here between the term union citizenship, which is used when indicating exclusive reference to the formal rules and norms entrenched in the European Communities Treaty. And there is the wider concept of EU citizenship, which defines the socio-culturally constructed meanings of citizenship, which are referred to by the term European citizenship. Okay, so these two different sets of definitions are considered by the policymakers and politicians about the European Union as a political entity. Okay, in this in this definition, we find firstly the union citizenship on the one hand, and secondly the European citizenship on the other hand. Okay, so as we already stated, the union citizenship is used when indicating exclusive reference to the formal rules and norms entrenched in the EC Treaty. The second one, which is the European citizenship, is the wider concept of socioculturally constructed meanings of citizenship, and this is a much broader concept. Okay, so let's look at the evolution of the legal perspective on European Union, legal perspective on Union citizenship. Okay, so this perspective on union citizenship focuses on the gradual enhancing of citizens' rights from market citizenship towards political citizenship. Okay, what do we mean by this statement? Okay, as we know, the European integration began as a form of economic community, and there were the basic market-related elements. within this community. So, the European citizens' rights were based on market citizenship at the beginning. However, within the evolution of the European integration, we witnessed the evolution of citizenship from this market-based feature towards a political-based citizenship. So, in this process, we witnessed a legal integration within the European continent. So, international law, European law, and the national legal contents of the current member states all have an impact on perceptions of the role and meaning of union citizenship. Let's give an example to that. Okay. For example, each member state has to adapt its legal procedures and legislation in line with new European directives. Okay, so as a summary, the case law of the European Court of Justice laid the early foundation of a right-based approach to freedom of movement that market citizens were moving across borders and residing in member states other than that of their own nationality. So, such a situation raised all sorts of practical issues. This includes social insurance, fundamental rights, non-discrimination on the grounds of nationality, and so forth. So these different practical issues which were raised by the newly developed features within the community brought forward two larger issues um, on the evolving concept of European citizenship. What are these issues? Firstly, the protection of social rights and the question of political inequality. The first one was largely dealt with by the case law of the European Court of Justice, and the second one was taken up by political actors such as the EU institutions and interest groups. Okay, in this lecture, we will continue analyzing the evolving political institutions and political practice within the European Union. We will begin this historical analysis from the 1970s and we will follow up this historical evolution until today. Okay. When we look at the evolving political institutions within the European Union, we can see that from the early 1970s, policymaking on union citizenship unfolded on the basis of two policy packages. These include the objectives of special rights for community citizens and a passport union for the community citizens. These policy objectives were adopted in the final communique of the 1974 Paris Summit. Both touch on crucial aspects of modern citizenship. These issues include the borders and how to cross these borders for the European citizens. So this is explained by the passport union and the citizens' right to vote and stand for elections. This is explained by the special rights. These two have been central to the debates about the citizenship, European identity, and political union. These have been evolving since the early 1970s. Okay, so in the 1990s, we witnessed another development. What was that? It was the Maastricht Treaty. Why this treaty was important for the European citizenship? Because with the Maastricht Treaty and also because of the end of the Cold War, we find the political project of building the Union back on the political agenda of the European countries. Critical perspectives on European identity were part of citizenship practice, and these issues were brought to the fore. From the outset, the European Community had considered itself as synonymous with Europe. But when the Cold War was over, the question became that the community should foster a sense of a pan-European solidarity and a pan-European integration. So these new questions challenged the discourse on European identity, and these issues came to the fore after the 1990s. We already mentioned that the Maastricht Treaty was crucial for the development or for the institutionalization of the European citizenship and for the inclusion of this concept within the legal texts of the European Union. Okay, so far um, the we discussed the concept of citizenship, both in the more general context and also within the European Union context. So let's discuss what are the challenges for the future, how this concept of citizenship would evolve in the future, what the future encompasses for the concept. Okay, despite formal institutional changes in the treaty for the European Union and in the constitutions of the EU member states, Union citizenship remains contested. Okay, so by this expression, we mean that the European citizens are not really sure what this new citizenship actually means for them. When you look at the results of the Eurobarometer surveys, we can understand this discussion. In all European Union member states, the citizens have questions about the implications of this new layer of citizenship for their own rights or own individual lives. Okay, so in this context, lawyers and political scientists differ in their assessments of what this European citizenship means or what it stands for regarding its future potential. Especially, this discussion occurs along three core dimensions. What are these three dimensions? Firstly, it is the identity of the citizens. Okay, so how can we explain this? Who belongs to where and why? So this is the first dimension. The second dimension is the type and range of rights citizens can evoke. In this context, we find such questions like which rights can be evoked within which institutions and on what level. So this explains how this second dimension operates at a practical level. Okay, the third dimension is about the channels of access to participation in the wider political and social community of European citizens. Here, in this third dimension, we find the questions such as who is allowed to participate, on what grounds, and where. Okay, so these questions define the third dimension. So, in these three core dimensions, we can explain the European citizenship. Okay, for the future, Europeanization and globalization both present significant challenges to modern state-related citizenship concepts. So, within this state and citizenship relations, we find significant challenges for the future. This is especially about the stability of this image. After all, once individuals began to enjoy different types of rights in a new world, which is reflected by more flexibility and also more mobility. Now it will become increasingly difficult to define citizenship practice as based only on nationality. So, in the global world, we find citizens to be more mobile and flexible regarding their country of citizenship or operation of their business. And within this context, it is more difficult to assess the peculiar citizenship rights of those individuals. So, which level would best define these individuals' rights? Okay, so we can state the fragmented aspect of European citizenship by noting its nature. So it is neither national nor cosmopolitan. But it is something else. It is like multiple in the sense that the identities, rights, and obligations associated with the European Union are experienced at a different supranational level, and they encompass different levels of identity. Okay, so we already discussed the impact of globalization over the identity in our previous lecture. And in this lecture, we also presented the challenges of globalization and Europeanization upon the state citizenship relations. Alright, okay, let's make a brief conclusion to this discussion. In today's lecture, we analyze the concept of citizenship and we try to analyze and overview its historical evolution throughout the European Union. So, in this lecture, we explored the definition and meaning of the concept of citizenship. We also referred to the concept of European Union citizenship from both legal and political perspectives. These definitions identified the rights conferred on each citizen of the European Union by the concept of union citizenship and we discuss them within the legal and political meaning of this new supranational form of citizenship. In this lecture, we also considered the implications of Union citizenship for the European integration. By comparing the citizenship of the Union to citizenship as a universal concept, as well as a concept that lies at the core of modern state formation, we tried to point to the ways in which this new citizenship differs in meaning. Um, so we refer to the earlier conceptualization or understanding of citizenship, and we tried to present how the new version or understanding of citizenship differs from the earlier understandings. As a universal concept, citizenship allocates fundamental rights and identities to individuals within a particular community. As a historical concept, citizenship sets the conditions for individuals to achieve full membership of a bounded political community. These are based on the rights, access, and belonging. Do you remember the chart we presented here? Okay, in that chart, we presented an overview of these three dimensions. However, we also presented the challenges to this European identity. We said that as the European Union is not a state as the traditional states, Union citizenship challenges the conventional understanding of citizenship and draws attention to the way in which citizenship has become an increasingly fragmented concept. So, the new or modern citizenship concept becomes even more fragmented within our globalized world. And it is getting more fragmented not only in Europe but also throughout the world. Okay, so I want you to read the text for this week and try to make up your own opinions about the subject. I want you to focus on these discussions and I want you to answer certain questions about this discussion. These questions are already given on your Sanal Campus online system, so you can refer to that online document for these questions which I want you to think upon or elaborate upon. So please read your article first and then try to elaborate on um, on these questions and try to formulate your own opinions or positions about these discussions. Okay, so within this context, please try to explain firstly how you can explain modern citizenship. This is um, this is already discussed at the beginning of our lecture. So please think about this modern citizenship concept and try to define it with your own words. Secondly, please think about the composing elements of citizenship. So Try to elaborate these composing elements of citizenship by yourself. Thirdly, try to explain European Union citizenship. We already tried to understand the European Union citizenship, and we already talked about it. So please uh, comment on it based upon your